Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Fisherman's favorite podcast. Open water is finally here. We're going to start creeping out on the rivers here. That's why we got Will in today. We're going to talk a little bit about that, a little bit about his tournament season. But basically, we're finally making the switch to open water. So I'm excited to get into it, and thanks for watching.
There's deer in the meadow, frogs in the pond, a place up the river where the fish are getting long. Bass in the lilies, crappie in the reeds, walleye on the rocks and pike in the weeds. There's a fella down the road who's a real fishing man, give you a stringer for the frying pan. Northland, fish and tackle, fisherman's favorite. It's a fisherman's favorite.
So, Will, have you been in the boat yet this year?
I have. I've actually snuck out twice. I fished the Freeze Your Butt Off tournament down on Pool 4. That was the first weekend of March. And then I snuck up to the Rainy before it refroze for about 4 hours for a quick afternoon session. I was kind of debating it, and it's like, do I really want to drive 2 hours just to fish for 4 hours? And I kind of thought that's a no-brainer because, yes, I get to be in the boat. I don't have to drill holes, and the fish are biting, so it was definitely worth it.
Got to bend the rod a little bit. Good bites on both outings, or?
The one on Pool 4 is a little tougher. Got really cold the week leading up to it, and the water temp dropped like 8 or 9 degrees. And a lot of the fish that were upriver started backtracking towards the lake, so it was a little bit tougher. A lot of saugers around. There's a few big fish getting caught. The day before, there was a couple setting up where we thought we could get to the next day, but they ended up leaving, so... Typical river stuff, but
so being in Bemidji here, obviously a lot of our stuff is Minnesota based, so we kind of have the Mississippi and the Rainy River are our early opportunities. I believe the Mississippi is open straight through, right?
Yeah,
the section, border water section, basically, right?
Yeah, so like Pool 2, that's catch and release year round.
Yeah,
and then Pool 4 and 3 is usually frozen until about mid-April, the end of April or so. But Pool 4 is, I think it's 2 over. You can have 1 over 20 per person, and then I think you have 5 under. Because I think you can have. I think it's 4 down there.
Check your local.
Yeah, check your thing. Don't hold me to it. I can't remember.
And then we got the Rainy that's open until about mid-April. You can fish for walleyes, and that's. Again, I believe check your regulations. That's catch and release only now. But we kind of have those 2 walleye opportunities, and they're unique. But I also feel like the river guys are kind of a culture. It's not something everyone out there does. But these rivers are fairly, they are navigable in the spring, and they're easy to do it. And I really think more people could get out and get after it because it's easy fishing.
Yeah, exactly. And usually, like, if you go down to, like, Pool 4 and stuff like that, it's, sometimes 10, 15 degrees, maybe even 20 degrees warmer down there than it is up here. Yeah. And I know down there when I left that Sunday morning, it was 72 degrees when I left and got back up here. And I don't even know if it was above hardly 40 when I got back. So it's just like a whole different world down there.
But it's kind of, a little rite of passage to get out there and bend the rod a little bit. But with that, you have some opportunities at some absolutely trophy-sized fish in both bodies of water. Everything's kind of moving into the systems, getting ready for the spawn, so that makes it really special as well. What's your biggest river fish?
The biggest river fish is probably 30 3/4. I think I didn't get a weight on it, but just I took a girth measurement of it and everything, and I think what I had on paper was like probably around 11.5, 12, I think, or so. It wasn't like a super big, like 13, 14 pounder or anything, but 11 to 12 pound fish is a big fish.
Yeah.
I mean,
just 11 to 12.
Yeah, guys take that for granted. They say they catch 10 pounders and stuff, all the time. It's like, well, around here, if you throw that on the scale, you're looking 7 to 8 pounds. You get one that's 10 or even 9 is a big fish around here. So if you can get those, double digits, those are special fish, no matter if they're 10 pounds or if they're 14, those are all big fish.
Yep. So for a new person headed to the river, what's some beginning tips for someone who's never done it before, either system?
Yeah, the best to start is if you just want a vertical jig. There's fish spread out all through the river, and all you have to do is just go to the front of the boat, just float with the current, vertical jig up and down, passes, and then when you start catching fish, kind of look on your electronics, like on your side imaging or on 2D, how deep you are, where you at, what the current's doing. That way you can kind of get a feel of how those fish are setting up. So if you want to go up and spot lock or anchor and pitch at those fish, you know what little key areas to look for and where to set up on. So a lot of times, even if I'm on a new river, I'll just float and just vertical jig or even just fan cast or stop once in a while, because it's all about the swing of your jig. So like that 45-degree angle when you're swimming it, you want that thing just barely just bumping the bottom. When you hit that about perfect 45-degree angle is when you're going to get bit. If you're dealing with conditions like we are this year where there's no flow or like hardly any, you're almost like lake fishing, then you can kind of start fan casting a lot more. Or a lot of times we'll pitch up into the current and work our jig back so we get more action out of our plastics and stuff like that. But other than that, just cover water, vertical jig, get a feel for it and how they're setting up, where they're setting up, and then go from there.
And how do you determine, what size jig you're going to go with? Do you just play it by feel? Obviously, it's going to be around a quarter ounce or
yeah.
8
Usually I'll start with a quarter. Just depends. If you just kind of float and you get a feel. I'll tie up usually 3 rods of like a quarter, a 3/8, and a half. Like sometimes if we're dragging up current and stuff like that, I'll start with a half just to see what I can get away with. But most of the time it's going to be a quarter to 3/8, no matter what you're doing. So,
yeah. And I feel like for the new angler out there, it's not detrimental to go a size heavier. If you don't know what you're feeling or whatnot, bump up size. You might get a little bit more snags, but you're gonna kind of know where your jig is in that system more. And a lot of times on heavier current years or dirty water, kind of keeping that jig in the strike zone is really important.
Yeah, bottom contact's about 80% of it, I would say.
Yeah.
So even if you are just a little heavy, a lot of times those fish will just pin it to the bottom or they'll snatch it up off there. But if you're way up above the rocks or up above bottom where they can't see it and they're not there, you're not going to get as many bites. So.
Yeah. And that's one reason I like the tungsten jig is on top of its weight, it definitely transmits sensitivity better. So again, if you're a new angler, getting that tungsten jig and feeling where you're on the bottom can be a super big help to getting bit.
Yeah, especially when it drops just a little bit faster too.
Yep.
You
Yep.
get there a lot easier.
And that pill-shaped head kind of helps it cut that current a little bit more. There's not a lot of hydrodynamic resistance.
Yeah, from my experience, like you want the jig size heavy enough, or you want to have a direct return, like feel, but like the least amount, but still have that feel. Mm-hmm. And then that usually is the right size.
How about line? Do you mess around with your line to get a thinner diameter line to avoid that resistance the current creates in the river, or do you just adjust your jig to compensate for that?
It kind of depends. Usually I'm throwing fluorocarbon on there like a 6-foot leader, no matter how dirty the water is, just because I'm superstitious. Mm-hmm. But I've been kind of playing around with the deal, like if the flow is really low or there's hardly anything, if I switch it up to mono just to kind of keep that jig up just a little bit, if it would help float it a little bit easier, instead of having it just sink down and being right in the rocks, if it would just float it up just a little bit, if you're in the rocks, to kind of pop it along a little easier. I'm kind of thinking about messing around with that too.
Yeah. Line can play a big role in getting bit. I know mono, just for lake season, when we finally have opener up here, is something I need to mess around with a lot more, because a lot of the old timers just swear by it of you're going to get more bites on mono. The guides, that see the braid versus mono, it's mono. So line plays a big role in how your presentation acts down there for sure.
Yeah, it just gives a little bit different action, a little bit different look. I've seen it work a lot better in situations where I wish I would have switched, but I'm always just braid. Yeah. And it's like, I gotta get away from it and switch it up a little bit once in a while.
Braid's fun and interactive. You can feel what you got down there. The bites feel better. Fighting them is better, but yeah, no, there's definitely times where other lines play for sure.
Will, I know when you're trying to find fish on the river, you utilized side imaging a lot. What are you looking for on side imaging? Is it just pods of fish, or is there, like, what type of structure would an angler that goes to a river and is trying to figure it out, what are they going to look for?
So like up on the Rainy, there's a lot of trees and timber and everything stuff down there, And a lot of times those fish are sitting right in the thick of the stuff, trying to get out of the current and sitting there just waiting to move up. So usually what I'll do is I'll find a big pot of trees or where I can see them on side imaging just sitting in the pods of the logs and everything else down there, and I'll go up just up current from it where there's a nice sand spot, and I'll anchor up right there, and I'll just wait for them to either swim up onto the sand, or I get my jig and I swim it right in front of those logs. Yeah. Just enough so I'm not getting snagged all the time, but just enough so it's like, okay, I'm in the tree, I'm right by where the fish are. All of a sudden, boom, you start pulling them out of there.
We had that one day with Bro that it was like you bombed the cast as far as you could, and that's where you'd get bit. Because we just, had spot lock on, and we're just bombing cast down, and if you were a little bit short, you weren't going to get it because we were just on some sand riffles, and they would just come up and crush it there. You just kind of, you'd feed it back to them a little bit, and that was one of the most phenomenal days I've had on the river. It was incredible. So
yeah, there was one night in college, there was 3 of us up there, and we had the craziest evening bite I think we had. I don't know how many doubles and triples we had, but we sat right on, pretty much just on the line on the U.S. side, and right on the border there's just a bunch of trees, and I could see them on side image in there, and you could just see the pods rolling in there, and there's nothing on this U.S. side, so we're sitting as close as we can, and you'd have to cast, and if you didn't feel your jig come over the logs, you might as well just reel it and cast again, because as soon as you'd pop it, right, here's a log, you pull it over the log and pull it one time, and you get cracked every single time. Just sitting right in there.
Wow.
Yeah, and fishing around more logs pays me and Charlie's paycheck, so keep it up, keep losing those jigs, but no, it's all part of the game and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
Another good place to look is just in the dunes, we call them, which is just the edge of the sand where the current kind of goes down. They kind of hide there.
Little riffles.
Yeah, and they're the easiest fish to find because you're just driving. You can just see the little markings in the sand, and all of a sudden there's pods of fish just sitting in there. So you can either drag up through them, you can vertical jig down, you can spot lock and move around and pitch at them. Otherwise, if you want to pull stick base through, like rumble shiners and stuff, like 3-ways, you can even throw them on a bottom bouncer and throw them down. That's what we did a lot of times, just because if we just had a regular 3-way weight, we get snagged and stuff. But if we had a bouncer, we could kind of just bounce on top of the logs and get through. That worked really good too.
How about holes? So a lot of people always talk about fishing river holes, and there's the front of the hole, there's the back of the hole. Fish can kind of spread out in all over the hole, but how do you target a hole? Because I know when I started river fishing, that was kind of a complicated thing to get my head around.
Usually on the upcurrent side of it, because those fish will be laying right in the middle, especially like this year with how low the water is. They're going to be just sucked right into the middle of the river because, I mean, spots that last year we fished were like 11, 12 feet are like 6 to 8 feet now, which is crazy. So all those fish are going to just keep slowly getting into the middle, which are going to start probably loading up. So if you can get into some of those holes, they'll either be laying right in the hole, or you can just lay right or sit right on front on the up current side, right when it starts to break, and those fish keep moving up and down. So
yeah, kind of use the break of the hole as a little resting spot.
Yeah,
it's almost wait for bait to kind of roll over the top of that lip and they chow it.
It's almost like you're setting up for sturgeon, where you set up right on the front of the hole and you pitch out and you just kind of let it just kind of move along in the back and let your bait. You're doing the same thing for walleyes.
Yeah, for sure. How do those two rivers differ between Rainy and the Mississippi?
The Mississippi, the fish are pressured probably about 95% more than up on the Rainy, so it's a little tougher with boat traffic and everything. But it just seems that the fish in Rainy are a lot hungrier coming out of the lake for sure. And like pool 4, those fish are so fat they don't have to do much to get a meal. Like when they eat it. Like it's game on. But they eat shad that are like this big a lot of the times, and they're full of eggs. So a lot of times they're not super aggressive. So guys will catch them after dark and stuff like that. But it's a lot tougher down there. But you just never know, that next cast could be a 10 to 14 pounder versus you go to the Rainy, you're going to get a lot of those 7 to 11, 12 mostly, but the ones down there, you get a shot at a true giant down there. So
for sure. Presentations, are you using mostly live bait, plastics, mixture?
It kind of depends. It seems like water temp dictates that a lot more. So like early season, like 32 and a half, to probably, I'd say like 35 minnows probably might shine a little bit more. If you have more flow that works those paddle tails and those plastics a little bit better, that'll help a lot too with that bite. But it kind of seems 50-50. But if you get water that's over 35 degrees, definitely plastics for sure. They're going to be just cracking them. I don't know if it's just because they want it more aggressive or that more action, much more action makes them want to fire a lot better. It kind of seems to be the deal. But that early season, that 32 to 35, definitely brings some live bait with.
And you definitely, another thing with plastics is you have an opportunity to make your whole presentation a little bit brighter.
Yeah, and they can see it easier.
Dirty water situation. So I feel like that plays a little bit of a role into things too, of getting those bright wild colors. I know early in the season that's where a lot of our eye candy sales are, in some of those brighter colors for people fishing the river, where lakes it flattens out to a little bit more natural stuff. But
yeah, especially with runoff right away when it's dirty and milky and stuff like that. Like this spring, we haven't had that runoff.
Yeah.
So it's been natural, like natural colors up on Rainy and on Mississippi. Like it's been natural to start. But if now that we got all this snow and stuff starts to dirty up a little bit, I'd definitely start throwing some brighter colors.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, the Deep V Spin, it's been a hot product and definitely a good product for the river, or a good jig for the river.
Yeah, it'll give a lot more. It'll make that bait look bigger going through the water. So just a little bit bigger profile, a little bit more action, a little bit more noise. Definitely pull them fish in from a little bit farther away.
I'm guilty of, especially like lake fishing, I don't always get very cute with my jigs. I have a lot of confidence in jigging them, and I'm jigging a plastic, but I feel like rivers is one time that those bladed jigs, skirted jigs really kind of shine. And do you think that's just because I think in all fishing there's obviously fish are out there to eat live minnows, right? And the more you can distract them from that live minnow, the better shot you have. So with a presentation that's a little bit farther off, do you think that happens because they're fighting more things against their senses in a river? You got the current that's going there, that's moving the water. You got the dirtier waters generally. Is that why you can get away with these and it helps a little bit more? Or what do you think
I think it just gives it just a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit bigger profile.
Just more profile?
Just a little bit bigger.
On the feed bag?
Yeah. And a lot of times if they see the same thing over and over again, like I don't know how many times they'll sit in the same pot of fish and you catch like 3 on a minnow. Okay. Then you go like 4 casts without catching anything. It's like, okay, I'm going to grab a plastic. And you throw a plastic in there. Whack, you catch like 2 more. Yeah. Then they stop eating that. Then you grab like a rip and chat or something, throw it in there. You catch another couple more. It's just like, just keep fighting or changing baits up left and right, just something different, that just gets them going a little bit different instead of seeing the same thing over and over and over. So
one thing that I think about is when you're fishing a jig and plastic and you get one that's working for you, you're giving a presentation consistently the same. And you're fishing live bait, one minnow might be different than the other, one's more lively than the other. And if they're going on plastics, you're consistently putting the same bait out there, and you're not, having a minnow that doesn't look good, doesn't look lively, or
that's a good point.
I mean, it's a chunk of meat, so you'd think that they'd want that, but
even bite with the minnow can come off, or like when you're sitting pitching it out and just letting the current work it, and you're not making a ton of casts. You're always fishing with something on the back of your jig, not just a empty jig. So
yeah, and it's a big confidence thing too. If you got it down, you have the right action on your jig and whatever you're throwing. If you have that confidence right there, you're gonna fish it perfect every time, and that goes a long way too.
Yeah. Do you have any river don'ts? Some stuff that you totally avoid doing on the river?
Yeah, if you get snagged in one spot, don't pitch there again. Because I don't know how many times we'll sit there and I'll cast in there. It's like, oh, I got to cut that one off. Quick retie. I throw it out there and I'm like, I just threw it in the same spot, and then it's gone again. Yeah. Don't do that. Slide up just a little bit or change your cast just enough, because I've lost a lot of money being lazy and just throwing it to the same spot again because I don't think. But
yeah, I think I saw you do that once.
Or twice, probably.
I think it was 3 in a row.
Yeah, I think I finally moved up after that.
Again, me and Charlie don't mind that. The more jigs, the merrier. We got plenty in the back there. We just keep buying them.
One tip that I remember from being on the river last season, I haven't been up there yet, but we were catching them on 1/4 ounce, and when Donnie switched to the Deep V Spin, he went up a size, and I think that's because of the lift from the blade.
Yeah.
and with the eye candy plastic.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I always whether it's, a buoyant plastic like eye candy or the blade, anytime I have anything that creates a little bit of lift, going up a size, I feel like never hurts in that situation. If it's too big, drop down. But yeah, definitely have those bigger sizes when you're having something that creates lift. I think my biggest river and I'm more rainy river is know the conditions. Because when those rivers blow out, and that'd be the big fork and the little fork on the rainy, and it muddies up the water, it can go from the day before your buddies just told you, oh, we crushed them, tons of fish, to you don't see a fish hit the net out of 100 boats all day long. So really keeping an eye on those conditions is pretty important.
Yeah, the biggest ones to look for is water temperature, current speed, and water clarity. Once you get those figured out, you know what to do on each. When it's every different condition, you can get a bait figured out for each different one, a color different for one, and you go back time after time. It's how, if it's different, if it's the same. Okay, it's 36-degree water temp, it's cloudy, the water's somewhat stained. I know I'm going to throw this, I'm going to get bit.
Yeah.
So if you can get that dialed in time after time, you're going to be a really good river fisherman.
How about color-wise? I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but is there colors you tend to go to on the river, metallics versus painted colors, brights versus natural? How do you determine that? Is that basically on the conditions of that day because the river changes so much?
Yeah, pretty much. I'll try to drop my bait down, and if I can see, I'll usually start with natural just because that's usually what I'm using. If I can drop it down and see at least a 1.5 feet or so, I can still see the silhouette of it, then I'm going to get away with it. But if I drop it down, a foot and I can't see it, then I'm switching up to bright colors usually.
Yeah, I've definitely made a couple trips up there and figured out pretty quick that probably weren't going to catch them very good because it was so dirty.
For sure. And it's dirty, it's moving fast.
Yeah.
Anytime you're fishing and you start reeling up your line and there's just grass,
might as well just go home.
Caked on your line. Yeah, it might be time to go home. So, with river fishing, there's other angling opportunities too. And I know I love getting after the sturgeon on the rainy. Do you ever get into those species as well?
I have. I think the biggest one I still caught was that day we were up there.
I know. I still can't believe how big that thing was because of how quickly you got it in on light tackle.
I can't believe it bit my crankbait. It literally bit
in the mouth.
Like I was rigging a leech, I went double tapped and it just started loading up, and I'm like, did I just hit a super weird rock that I just had a fish, and it felt like it, and I just kind of was like, I'm snagged, and then all of a sudden I'm like, no. Comes up and you can just see the hook laying in its mouth, comes up wrapped up, and I'm like, what was it, 65 or something it was?
Yeah, it was significant. Again, you had lighter spinning gear on, and you're like, oh, this could take forever. So you're kind of like, we want to get walleyes, and you're horsing it a little bit. And we saw it a bit, and I don't think we thought it was as big the first look at it. Mm-hmm. So you're just horsing it, and I mean, we got it up in I think it was 5 minutes or less. It was pretty incredible. And it hit I think we had a bigger net, and you scooped it up, and I was like, okay, that thing can't be that big. We got in the boat, and I started looking at it, and then you held it up, and you put it on the tape, and it was definitely over 60, but I think it was 65, 67.
Yeah.
It was...
yes. If we wouldn't have got it on the first net job, we probably would have
been there all day. I think it was one of those situations of sturgeon don't always know they're hooked. We have that a lot fishing for them, where you get one shot at the surface and then they make a dive, and it's game on with heavy, saltwater or musky rods or catfish rods, 80-pound braid, lock drags, and you can't move them.
And when it's your only crankbait that you have with you on the boat, it's kind of I need this crankbait back. And it's we're only a half hour into the day, come on, come back. Yeah.
So, no, sturgeon fishing is definitely fun, and hope to get up there and get after it a little bit. It's the river fishing is between what the weather does, what the river does. It's always such crunch time. It's sometimes
it's temperamental. Gosh, it just the littlest changes. When we were fishing the freeze your butt off tournament, like the bite was good right away. There wasn't that much flow, and there was flat calm, and the wind was supposed to kick up to like 8 miles an hour or something. Well, it kicked up to like 15, and it just shut the bite right down. It was just blowing against the current, and those fish either dumped out or reset somewhere else that we couldn't find them. I mean, I talked to a few other guys. They said the same thing. It shut off at like the same time. That wind cut up towards the current that was barely there and just kind of screwed everything up. And, you know, a lot of guys figured it out towards the end of the day. We did not.
Yeah.
But that just, those little changes are big.
It turns it into a completely different than lake fishing. Whether it's a little river, big river, there's just so many little things with current and clarity and water temperatures that just, I'm still just grasping my mind around some of these things. It's so different sometimes.
Yeah, it'll humble you really quick. You could be the best angler in the world, go there, and it'll humble you.
Yeah. And then there's some river rats that just, that's all they do, and they just get it. Mm-hmm. It's pretty incredible. So understanding all that.
Yeah, it's wild, some of those guys' minds and some of the stuff they talk about. I'm like, you know, if I see them on side imaging, or they should be here with this, you know, I'm like, oh, there they are. And then they're gone. And it's like, oh, I don't know what to do now. Yeah. You know?
I know it's a little bit more difficult to utilize forward-facing sonar on rivers. What's the best way that you've found to utilize it? I
would say using perspective on a pole mount. So that if you spot lock up and, like, say you're fishing dunes or you're fishing a rock pile, so like rock piles and stuff, I'll spot lock, use forward so I can scan over the rocks and see if anything's moving up over top of it. Or if you're sitting like in the sand where you can see easier, spot lock on the pole, turn it, and you can see which dune and what spots those fish are laying in. So that way you make the right cast to swing right over the top of them versus just trying to, I think, you know, they're over here at 40 feet. Well, here they're at 25 or 30 only, and you pass over the top of them, they don't see it. So perspective for like sand stuff, and then forward for rock stuff, so you can see them. Wing dams and stuff like that, you can see them push up, which side they're sitting on, how they're setting up.
Gotcha.
The perspective stuff, because when I first started hearing about it, I always thought it was shallower than that. Like, how deep will you go with perspective?
You can use it pretty deep. It's like a lot of times those fish are suspended, like on the lakes and stuff.
Yeah.
You can see them, you know, it's like, okay, you can see the top of them. Okay, well, that looks like a muskie. This looks like a walleye. So it just takes it and just flips them over on top so you can kind of tell for sure what you're looking at.
That cone's kind of wide and angled down, so you are getting more of that perspective. Yeah, I'm excited to play with it this summer because
be a little bit easier to not spend time on muskies and big pike and versus pitching at walleyes, so it helps a little bit more.
Yeah. All right, so you got you're doing the National Walleye Tour again this year. Talk to us a little bit about the schedule, what you're looking forward to, maybe what's going to be a learning experience, what you're not looking forward to.
Yeah, the first one is on Lake Erie. I leave like April 10th. I'm leaving. I'll be out there for I have about 7 days. You know, there's always blow days in there here and there if it's too windy, so you want to make sure you have enough time to go and practice. It's actually the first place that I fished in NWT back in 2016. I was a co-angler out there. Fished there in 17, and I haven't been back there since. So I'm really excited to get back out there because it's just schools of walleyes everywhere. Yeah. Most likely we'll be trolling, but I am going to try to play around a little bit, you know, just see if you can find something a little different casting, but probably be trolling most of the time. And then the second event's pools 3 and 4. We're taking off out of pool 3 out of the Treasure Island. That one still scares me a little bit, but I think we'll be able to find something. Bounce around there. Not looking forward to it, but I kind of am at the same time just because I like fishing different stuff, and I haven't fished pool 3 before. Or pool 4 at that time of year either, so it'd be kind of cool to get down there finally that time of year. The one that's going to be tough is Green Bay because we're going there in June, and it's going to probably be during the alewife spawn, so there it's going to be really tough. The nice thing is we only need to bring in 3 fish for that event per boat. So I'm going to start with 1.
Yeah.
Start with 1. If I can just get 1 each day, I'll be super happy. Just because it's going to be an interesting event to see what happens. But that alewife spawn is going to throw a curve for a lot of people. So, and then the third one we're going to, or no, that was the third one. The fourth one we're going to is Sakakawea. That one I'm really looking forward to. I've been wanting to get out there for a long time. So I'm really excited for that one just because I like North Dakota and it fishes similar to what we fish. So that one I'm really looking forward to. And then the championship, if you make the top 40, is Lake Huron. I think we're launching out of Oscoda, Michigan. I think that's what it is. And I haven't fished there. I fished Saginaw Bay. I've ice fished there. I fished the Sioux. So literally just right at can't remember the name of it, but right at the top of Lake Huron and around there. But I haven't fished Lake Huron itself, so that one will be interesting if I make it. But it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be a good year. There's gonna be a lot of big fish brought in.
Say all those lakes, you have opportunities at some giant fish in them.
Yeah.
Even if it's a little tougher, there's big fish in all of those systems.
Yeah, I'm excited. So it'll be a fun year.
What do you think the weights are gonna be on Erie? Because that's going to be a smash fest, isn't it?
I think this last weekend there was a tournament and there was like 55 bags over 30 pounds. Wow. But this is pre-spawn though. So I think the water's going to warm up a lot here in the next 2 weeks out there. Because like when I get out there, it's supposed to be like pushing 60s.
Okay.
So if that water temp warms up and they start dumping out, it might be half and half still to spawn, half not. So you're going to want to find those bigger fish, pre-spawners. But I think whoever finds those will be good because, like, you can go out and catch all the post-spawn fish you want. You know, you have an average of 25 to 29 inches while you got 25 to 30 pounds. Yeah. So if you can find those pre-spawners to get those 8, 9, 10 pounders versus those 5 to 8 pounders, it goes a long way.
Especially those Great Lakes fish. I have very limited experience out there, but a number of years ago, we went out with Tony Roach and Adam Rasmussen out there. And we were catching fish, but a lot of it was post-spawn. And, like, you'd catch a 29-incher, and you're like, geez, this thing's long, but it's, like, skinny. And then finally Adam caught a pre-spawn one, and it didn't even look real to me. It was just, like it was a mythical creature. It was just, like, the biggest, most incredible walleye I've ever seen. So, yeah, those pre-spawn fish can, I would assume, make or break it for you in tournament day.
So, we'll see. I know there's fish are loaded up in the rivers. Guys are catching them, so they're starting to spawn right now. Haven't seen too many post spawners yet. I saw a couple pictures of a few, but it's going to change a lot, I feel, from now till tournament time. So you're just going to have to stay on the fish, follow them from day to day, where they're going, where they're heading, and keep trying to intercept them just to make sure that, you know, just because they're here today doesn't mean they're here tomorrow. So it's going to be an interesting one. See who can stay on them, and you know, it could be a guy who hasn't been on them all week, and all of a sudden goes out tournament day, and boom, they're there, and then they light the world on fire. So
you said Erie will be a lot of trolling for you, which historically it is, but you hear, you know, even prior to forward-facing sonar, you hear more and more people getting on schools and pitching on them with forward-facing. You know, if you get on a big school, you stop, and can you just pitch on those fish and just crush them? Yeah. Or are they still pretty spread out where trolling's more effective?
I know a few guys have been trying to do it the last couple weeks out there, and it's been a little tougher.
Okay.
The only reason is because the water cooled down, so it's like around the lower 40s right now. Mm-hmm. And what they're biting right now mostly is like Smith Mick, Perfect 10s or whatever they call them, those bandits, stuff like that, slow moving crankbaits, and they're only going like 1.2 to 1.8.
Okay.
You know, just slowly pulling those things by them. And, you know, when we're doing forward stuff, a lot of times it's more of an aggressive bite.
Yeah.
So if that water temp cranks up, it'll be interesting. If I'm going to try casting just because that's what I'm used to fishing. If not, I'm just going to put the trolling boards down, and hopefully we can get a few good ones and call her good and come back and do some fun fishing.
That's right. What's one setup that you have that you're going to have rigged up probably for every tournament, whether you know you're going to use it, but something that you always have to your right hand?
Would be probably an 1/8 to 1/4 ounce smelt niter jig with either a paddle shad or a minnow. Just because every place I've gone to, every fish has at least ate that.
Yeah.
So number one, I'll have that on. I might have a live bait rig. Well, not live bait rig, but something for live bait, like with a jig or something like that, just for live bait stuff. Other than that, I'll have crankbaits tied up too, just because you can pitch crankbaits and just as easy, you know, on rock piles and stuff like that. So usually, my key is if I can find 3 baits that those fish will eat, they're at least going to eat one by tournament day. Because like one might fade out or another one might fade out. But usually if you can find 3, at least one of those presentations is going to hold. And then also like pitch and puppet too. They'll eat any place I've gone to, even the rivers, they'll eat those too.
Yeah, that's a good way to go into it. Try to find three lures that they'll eat, and then tournament day figure out what they want that day.
Mm-hmm. And 9 times out of 10, it's usually only one.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing it's again, we talked about confidence, we were talking about river fishing, but it's kind of incredible when you see these more national tournaments where you have to do more traveling, because everyone's kind of got their core technique, and all these systems, the culture of fishing is so much different. Like in Wisconsin, they drag the flies around, right? Something that's never done in Minnesota. There's just like weird things here and there, but there's always a few techniques that no matter what body of water you're on, they work for you. I think that's pretty incredible. And I think a lot of those techniques could stretch farther, but those cultural techniques are different. Like, do you spend a lot of time on some of those destination things learning that stuff, or do you always usually mostly stick to your confidence?
I'll try it. If my stuff doesn't work, then I'll go to it. But usually I try to do what I do, and if they're not doing that, then I'll switch it up, because if they'll eat what I'm used to doing, then I can really dial it in and figure out what I need to do. So if not, then I'll switch to it. But 9 times out of 10, I'm going to what I know, and I'm going to do it, and then just try to branch out, maybe switch different colors, different sizes, and stuff like that. And if all else fails, then I'll just go to what usually works.
What other events are you fishing outside of the NWT?
I'm doing. I haven't signed up yet, but I'm going to do the Leech Lake Walleye Tournament with Katie.
Cool.
So we're gonna do that one. Doing the Knights of Bemidji. Need some revenge after that one. What else am I doing? I'm doing a couple tournaments up on Lake of the Woods in July. Doing AIM on Leech, and then AIM on Lake of the Woods as well for the championship there. And then September is going to be busy because if I make the championship for NWT, that'll be in Huron, and then the MWC on Cass, our 2-day tournament on Bemidji, and then hopefully the Pelican Lake Classic again, because that's a really fun lake to fish, and then the Walleye Dam tournament too.
Awesome.
So it's gonna be a busy summer.
Let's get her going.
What is there a certain event you look forward to the most?
I would say the Lake of the Woods ones, because
you always do pretty well up there.
It's those fish are so fun. Gosh, they're just big and they're mean, and it's nerve wracking every time because you see those fish come and it's just like, oh God, here we go, and then whoa, boom, and then you're just like, just please stay on, It's so nerve wracking in the waves, and it's like, oh my God, and it falls off, and you're like, and you go back to the next one, and, oh, rod's bent again. So it's a fun place to fish.
Cool. Is there a new technique you're going to start working on at all this summer? Something you're going to play with a little bit more that you haven't had a ton of confidence in the past?
I would say just with like pitching puppets, just because they sit up in the air a little bit longer than like a jig wrap would. A jig wrap is kind of dart and it just goes to the bottom, and that pitching puppet kind of just sits up a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to work on fishing suspended fish more with those, and just working different actions and seeing how they
not
react.
Letting it hit the bottom, just fishing. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
The rest is not to be shared.
Top secret, confidential material. Let's talk a little bit about the eye candy stuff and how you've been utilizing that. What shapes you maybe like more than others? How does eye candy play a role into your? So
South Dakota, we're fishing trees like as shallow as 25 feet to out as deep as 90. And a lot of those fish are just sitting in the trees doing this, like a bass would in the trees, just sitting there not doing a single thing.
Yep. And
they lowered the water about 3 feet, I think it was, the day before the tournament, and they kind of
just giving you.
Yeah. So, and they kind of went more neutral. I mean, we were still catching, I'd say 12 to 25 fish a day, but like pre-fishing, it was like 40 to 100. Like, it was just nuts. And then they put that water down. There was no flow, nothing. Like, everything went stagnant. So what I was doing is I take that minnow and I drop it 45 feet of water, whatever, right over that fish on the tree, and I just mope it. Straight Gussie style. I'm like, if he could catch a bass doing this, why wouldn't a walleye do it? And I was just sitting there first morning. I just held it there, and I'm just like looking at this mark, and I'm like, all of a sudden that fish just got bright and just inhaled it. I was like, oh my God. It's like 19 and a half. Like, sweet, good under. Threw it in, dropped it back down, went to another tree. Like, just let it sit there. I kind of looked at it. I just kind of gave it just a little twitch up. And all of a sudden, it just, same thing, inhaled it. I was just like, God, this is actually a thing. And I caught like 4 more like that. And that was pretty much what I got my whole first day bag on, was doing that. Wow. So if they weren't eating it moving or anything, I just sit there and hold it and just mope it right in front of their face till they ate it.
Yeah.
It's a deadly technique.
And that was with the minnow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a big fan of the paddle shad, but the minnow's definitely growing on me. And I think the minnow is going to be one I have tied up all the time this year too, along with the paddle shad. How about scent? So let's talk a little bit about scent, because it's been a really hot topic since we've come out with eye candy. It was a benefit we saw in it, but I think the more and more we fished with it, it probably, again, the least important part about eye candy. But I know there's a lot of people that have a lot of confidence in scent. Are you scenting your stuff for tournament day, or using it straight out of the package?
Just straight out of the package for the most part. We did play around on pool 4 this year and threw a little scent on them. Yeah. And it seemed to help a little bit. Yeah. But it's like, it seems once, they see the same bait for a while, or you're in the same area, if you throw a little scent on there, you get like 1 or 2 more bites. It seems like. So it's like kind of like a last resort kind of thing for me. But other guys have
a lot of
confidence in it.
So that's what I kind of see too. I think A, it's a confidence thing, which is huge, and B, it might give you that little bit of edge, or hang on to it a little bit more. But one thing I've noticed, played around with a little bit, is walleye fishing with plastics, I always used to be bite set. And Tom Wynn kind of turned me on to it when he first started doing it. He smelled it out of the package, and he's like, oh, I like that, because it has no plastic scent. Mm-hmm. He's like, oh, some baits really smell like beach balls, and you don't want that. And even the scentless ones, you can cast it up to a walleye and they can pick it up. And I think 'cause it's so squishy and everything, they will walk away with it like a bass does. Mm-hmm. They don't spit it immediately like I think what was originally thought of when you're plastic fishing walleye. So I there's something about it, but it's not needed, but it helps. And we get a ton of questions of what scent works with eye candy. And the answer is most water and oil-based scents. We've tested a bunch of them. We always recommend maybe pulling one bait out of the bag and trying it first. And that eye candy is actually an absorbent material, so it's going to soak that up. Now, that being said, there are some scents that react with eye candy, and the one we've found so far is, sorry, Spike It, but Spike It will dissolve it like it's acid, so you don't want to use Spike It with it, but a lot of other scents soak right up. It will change the color of it a little bit, which I think for me, that's kind of a negative of adding scent, is so many of the transparent colors we have just look so good in the water that you don't want to tint it with the color of your scent. But yes, it's big to some people not. I thought it was going to be a huge deal for me, and then in classic unprepared lazy form, it just gets thrown in my boat, and I take the one that hasn't been soaking in scent out, and it catches them just as good, and my confidence is right there. So
yeah, I mess around with garlic once in a while just to try it. Sometimes it helps. I don't know, just something a little different, especially if you're fishing pressured fish, or if you have a front that came through a lot of times, just a little bit different smell to it. A lot of times can trigger that fish. So
yeah, and I mean, I do think it's important to walleyes. I mean, you look at their nostrils, and they're like cones to suck stuff in, but I don't know. I'm definitely gonna play around a little bit more with it. But Charlie, you a big scent guy?
No, I just like to fish it straight out of the package. I will play with it sometimes if I really am trying to figure out how to get these fish to bite and stuff like that, but mostly just straight out of the package. And I don't know. It's kind of a confidence thing.
Yeah, I know. Interesting.
But I do know walleyes can't really walk. They don't got feet for legs, but they'll swim away.
That's true. That's very true.
That is true.
Yeah. Open water is here. We're excited to get out, get the boats fired up. I haven't made it yet, but the weather's been a little funky, but it'll be here now, and I'm excited to get out and start playing with some of this stuff, some of the new stuff we're developing. So it's going to be a good summer for sure. Maybe a little bit of rain to fill up the lakes and rivers, but I'm looking forward to it.
The season will be in full swing before we know it.
Before we know it.
Upper 50s are on the horizon. I just looked.
Yeah.
Now it's probably going to be snowing then, now that I said that, but it looks promising. So we can only take what we can get, I guess. So
thanks everyone for listening. Give us a like, that helps us out a bit, and then comment too on some stuff you want to see in future shows. So we're going to try to get on a little more regular pace throughout the summer here. But thanks for listening to the Fisherman's Favorite Podcast.
Northland, fish and tackle, fisherman's favorite. It's a fisherman's favorite.